Weymouth and Dorchester West are disrupted. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, D-Day at the White House as Zelensky, Trump and Vance go for round 2, popcorn at the ready. And do you remember last week we spoke about people putting Union and St George flags up in Birmingham and then being taken down? Well, I've got to tell you, momentum has spread. The colour movement is spreading up and down the country, and councils are not happy about it. Should those flags be allowed to fly proudly? And Labour Party have got a new attack campaign focusing on Reform UK. Let's take a look at that. And of course, it happened last week, didn't it? Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor of Slit Their Throats fame, found not guilty. I can tell you there's been quite a big fallout. Keeping me company, my panel tonight, I've got Zia Youssef, the head of Reform UK's Department of Government Efficiency, and new face to this show, Martin Abrahams, the Labour councillor. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 6 o'clock, well, the top story tonight, there is a show of unity in Washington. Sir Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron and Italy's Giorgia Meloni have arrived at the White House in the last few minutes ahead of high-stakes talks on Ukraine with President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine's main goal tonight is a reliable and lasting peace and insists Russia must be pressed to end its new attempts at conquest, he says. Hours earlier, he accused Moscow of carrying out what he described as cynical strikes designed to humiliate diplomatic efforts. Downing Street has hinted Sir Keir Starmer could back a peace deal even without formal ceasefire, while Trump has ruled out NATO membership for Ukraine or a return of Crimea. Those talks today are expected to focus on robust security guarantees for Kyiv, though the Kremlin has yet to comment. Closer to home, pubs are vanishing from Britain's streets at a rapid pace, with 8 shutting for good every week in the first half of this year. Official figures show 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June, as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates take their toll. Industry leaders call the closures heartbreaking, and they're urging the Treasury to deliver tax relief in the autumn budget. Meanwhile, 100 NHS diagnostic centres in England are now open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. The move aims to cut waiting times and speed up diagnoses, with more than 7 million checks and scans carried out since July. Care Minister Stephen Kinnock told us the changes will help thousands of patients get seen sooner.
They have a vitally important role in terms of maximising access for people. So if it's open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, even people with busy working lives can very rapidly get an appointment. They have the whole spectrum of diagnostics, from MRI scans to CAT scans to X-rays, and it's going to really help because they're embedded in communities. They're in your local shopping centre, maybe in your local university.
Also tonight, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to ease environmental protections to accelerate infrastructure schemes. The Treasury is drafting another planning reform bill that could scrap parts of European nature rules blamed for blocking development. Ms Reeves says the changes are essential to drive growth and raise living standards, repeating her criticism of bats and newts as economic obstacles. Well, that comes as the Chancellor is also considering a property tax overhaul, replacing stamp duty with a new property on homes sold for more than £500,000. The Treasury proposal, still though in an early stage, could also pave the way for reform of council tax, which is based on 1990s property values. Rachel Reeves says the changes would aim to boost fairness and raise revenue without breaking Labour's pledge not to increase taxes on working people. The mother of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, shot dead in her own home in Liverpool, is urging communities to speak out against gun crime. Her death was the third fatal shooting in just a week on Merseyside. Now Olivia's mother, Cheryl, and other bereaved families are working with the group Evolve to reclaim neighbourhoods worst hit by serious and organised crime. 3 years on, Cheryl says the pain is indescribable and that no other family should suffer the same.
I think one of the biggest successes of the Evolve project has been the 300% increase in community intelligence from our communities. That is obviously really significant because it means the communities do have more confidence in the police now. They're coming forward, they're telling the police or Crime Stoppers or whatever route they're using, they're telling them what's going on, and that means the police can take action against these criminals that are causing this harm. So I think that's a really positive narrative in terms of the relationships that have been built between the police and the community since then.
That's it from me for now. Do stay with us for more on the White House as we await Volodymyr Zelensky to arrive. Now, though, let's hand back to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that. That last story that I often find myself thinking of Olivia's mum. Can you imagine what she must be going through? What a strong, inspiring woman to be able to turn that tragedy out into trying to help other people and to make changes in your community like that. I give her all of my best wishes and hugest of respect. Also, as well, in those headlines, that story about the pubs closing. How depressing is that? I don't know where those pubs are. I certainly keep my local one in business. We should organise like a GB News pub crawl. How good would that be? I think that's what I'm going to go to bed thinking about tonight. Anyway, look, I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you till 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, my panel. I've got Zia Youssef, Head of Reform UK's Dirge, and a new face to the panel. I've got Martin Abrams, the Labour Lambeth councillor. Good evening, new face. We always like
Good evening, Michelle. Pleasure to be here.
Tonight. Zia, welcome back to you. And you know the drill, it's not just about us, it's also about you at home. What's on your mind? Get in touch all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yourset, or you can tweet or you can X me. But ladies and gents, have you got your popcorn ready? Because do you remember 6 months ago when you had Zelensky meeting Donald Trump and, of course, J.D. Vance? Who can forget what unfolded that night?
Gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Awkward. We'll stand by, ladies and gents, for round 2, because that will be taking place imminently. Our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, joins us in the studio. Bring us up to speed. What should we be expecting?
Well, hopefully no more of that. Just watching it, still so incredibly uncomfortable to watch. I think both sides are determined not to allow it to descend into that kind of vitriol that we got on the last occasion. Certainly Volodymyr Zelensky will be better briefed on not necessarily sort of nipping back even if he doesn't agree with what Donald Trump might say at a certain point. But I think the most interesting thing to find out from the meeting that is taking place is whether this will be at all acceptable to Volodymyr Zelensky.
So I'm really sorry to interrupt, ladies and gents. I am sat next to one of the most fascinating men in GB News studios, but I'm getting a little whisper that you guys at home cannot actually hear him. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a kicking in the microphone department, and he will be starting that conversation. Again, Mark White, what were you saying?
It's only been 30 years in broadcast journalism. You'd think I'd get
Between
it right.
me and you, I think he popped to the little boys' room earlier on, and I think he wanted to avoid a repeat of, what's that film, Naked Gun? When he goes to the toilet and leaves his microphone on. Anyway, I massively digress. We need to talk about very important matters. Carry on, Mark.
Yes, I do apologise. So if you didn't catch that, what I was saying is hopefully there's not going to be a repeat of the complete car crash that we got in February. Both sides, I think, very anxious, understandably, to avoid that. What will be very interesting, though, is really to see what Volodymyr Zelensky has to say to Donald Trump face-to-face, coming away from that meeting on Friday with Vladimir Putin. Now, lots of people saying that Donald Trump didn't get what he was setting out for, which of course he had said very publicly was an immediate cessation of violence, a ceasefire, while they could then get into the substantive negotiations. He didn't get that. He seems to have backtracked from that initial demand of Vladimir Putin. I know that, you know, from the Ukrainians' point of view, what they've said very publicly as well as, yes, they want a ceasefire because they want to stop a repetition of what we got again just last night, where we had multiple missiles and drones coming across the border from Russia that killed 10 people, including an 18-month-old child, and injured dozens more. That is a nightly occurrence in Ukraine. They've had 3.5 years of this. They are war-weary, understandably. They would like to see a ceasefire and then get into the negotiations about, yes, they acknowledge it's probably going to have to be there are going to have to be some tough and unpalatable decisions made about what land they're willing to cede to Russia at the end of the day. But they don't want to do that while war is still raging within Ukraine.
So just for the viewers, if you're listening on the radio, what we're seeing now is actually live pictures outside of the White House. And we've already had, entering into the White House, you've had leaders of the likes of EU, Keir Starmer, of course, France, Germany, NATO. Those guys are already inside that building. We're currently waiting on, I think it's the final attendee now, Zelensky. Was he supposed to be there by now? Is he running late? What's going on?
No, he was supposed to be there about now. So I think this is all running to schedule. We've had all of the European Commission and NATO leaders in there now. So just waiting for Volodymyr Zelensky. You'll have Donald Trump will come out, no doubt, onto the steps of the White House to welcome him. We're told after the fuss that was made the last time about the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky was wearing his khakis and not a suit, which many people within the Trump administration found quite disrespectful, that this time round he will wear a suit, or at least a dark kind of suit jacket. Let's see what he's wearing when he comes out. The thing, you know, from Volodymyr Zelensky is, it's his shtick, isn't it? He wants to portray himself around the world as a wartime leader, which he absolutely is. He doesn't want people around the globe to forget what his nation is enduring on a daily basis and trying to fight against Russia.
The fellow was doing photo shoots, was he not?
He was what?
Wasn't he doing photo shoots in Vogue? Was it Vogue, Zelensky? I'm sure he was, ladies and gents. You guys have got eagle eyes at home. You can correct me.
Wearing his khakis.
Yeah, I've always found this whole style and Zelensky situation a little bit odd. It raises my eyebrows, I've got to tell you.
OK,
anyway.
well, you may have a point, but I would just ask you to cast your mind back quite a few decades now to the Second World War, and I think you'll find that Winston Churchill used to also
everyone gives me that pushback. I've had all these pictures sent to me because the last time when he went to the White House, because you say it's just the Trump administration that thinks it was quite disrespectful, I thought it was quite disrespectful actually, and I was whining about it at the time on my programme, and I was inundated with pictures of the likes of Churchill on this lawn and that lawn and all the rest of it. It still didn't change my view though.
In the scheme of things, I think it's the least important issue to get
I don't know, you know. I think it does actually send quite an interesting message, and I think it gives quite an interesting insight into what Zelensky's positioning is, because many people, you say you found it quite uncomfortable watching that exchange last time. I found it fascinating. And I thought that Zelensky completely overplayed his hand. I think he was really caught on the hop. He's used to being lauded and applauded, whether that's crashing into music festival screens or parliament screens or wherever it is. And I think for the first time, he got quite a shock that he really wasn't expecting. So whilst it might seem a small thing, what's he got on, what's he wearing clothes-wise, for me, I found it quite indicative of what the potential outcome will be in these conversations.
On that issue, I will agree with you in terms of the way in which things played out. And actually, it was very ill-judged on his part, the fact that, you know, when you're dealing with Trump, you just need to take the blows. When you come away from the Oval Office, you can get your own messaging out. And he clearly nipped back, because you're right, he is used to being feted around the world as this wartime leader who has stood up to the aggression of Russia and will stay in his country to prosecute that fight alongside his troops. And he has, of course, enjoyed a very large degree of celebrity. Maybe he has believed to an extent in his own publicity, but I think lessons have been learned there. On the dress issue, you may see it as being a bit disrespectful to Trump. You can argue that point, but I would just say this is disrespectful to every world leader, because that's what he wears.
He does. So tell us then, who's going to be in this meeting? I think actually we've got some movement on the screen. Let's just see this, whether or not it is indeed Zelensky. Who's going to be taking part in this meeting? Are those leaders going to be there, the likes of Macron and all the rest of it, or is it going to be...
It will be Vladimir Zelensky, President Trump and Vice President Vance. And you can see Donald Trump there, as suggested, out greeting Vladimir Zelensky. And I'm just looking at his attire.
Get out of the way, car.
It's a bit dark, that
image. It is. I want to see what he's wearing.
I think my bet of a dark suit jacket is probably not far off the mark there.
Well, there you go. It looks like he's made a bit of an effort. Some of you will say, Michelle, don't be so trivial. What does it matter what he's wearing? But some people might have a completely different view. So anyway, I rudely interrupted you as telling us who's going to be in the meeting.
Well, just basically the president, the vice president, Vladimir Zelensky, maybe one of his closest aides, I'm not quite sure. Who won't be in the meeting are any of the European leaders who've gone all the way across to the US. But for them, they say the trip there is really about trying to show Vladimir Zelensky that they have his back, that they are full square behind him in his efforts to do the right thing for his people. And if he decides at the end of the day that whatever the deal or the messaging that has come back from Vladimir Putin is, that that's just not the road he wants to go down, the European leaders will still have his back and the Ukrainian people's back going forward. And that's going to be a big ask.
Well, yeah, it is. And just before I bring my panel in, let me just ask you about this, because you're quite right. Donald Trump was saying that the Europeans will need to step up, led by Britain. There was some conversation that actually that could even mean British boots on the ground. What do we know about that?
Well, I don't think you'd even be going anywhere near British boots on the ground, because what you would have is America exiting stage left, and the European allies of Ukraine having to go in there and substantially upscale the contributions they're making both in monetary terms and in military equipment terms to Ukraine, to try and make up the shortfall for that lack of equipment that will come from the US. Now, it's possible that there may still be some US equipment that Ukraine would have to pay for, or I say Ukraine, probably its allies, would have to pay for. But what they then wouldn't have, unless it can be agreed through the United States, is the kind of intelligence that Ukraine absolutely relies on, the day-to-day satellite imagery that helps it with its targeting of Russian troop movements, that helps it defend against Russian missiles and drones coming into Ukraine. So it can be a very difficult process going forward if Ukraine decides that what Russia is proposing is just too unpalatable for it to proceed with. And then what are we into? Are we really into a process where these European allies are going to continue bankrolling the Ukrainian war effort for potentially many years to come?
Zia Youssef, what's your thoughts on Reform UK's position on some of this stuff?
Well, Reform's position is that we support Ukraine's sovereignty robustly. Vladimir Putin is an evil man. Going to be clearer about that stuff. But look, ultimately, President Trump is doing his utmost, clearly and evidently, to try to bring an end to this meat grinder war that has cost enormous amount in terms of bloodshed, in terms of infrastructure inside Ukraine, and we applaud that.
But one of the key kind of lines on this one is whether or not Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO. That will be one of the key sticking points. Where's Reform's view on that?
Well, it sounds like, if you look at the latest reporting, that what the Trump administration is trying to do, again, is to make peace. Peace involves compromise. That is the nature of peace. And as painful as whatever compromises that need to be made might be, well, they have to be weighed up against the pain of continuing, as I said, this enormous amount of bloodshed without any compromise. So, look, I think fundamentally what Trump is trying to do is offer some kind of security guarantee. That's some sort of de facto security guarantee without membership of NATO. Let's see whether he's successful in doing that.
Martin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I slightly differ from Zia's view on Donald Trump because he came into his presidency in January saying he could get a deal done on Ukraine on the first day of his presidency, and I think he's had a pretty harsh collision with reality because, you know, this isn't a conflict that can be done with just the shake of a hand and a kind of business deal like he does in his boardrooms.
Let's go back to the Oval Office live now. Zelensky and Trump. Take a listen.
In many ways. We had a good meeting, as you know, just a short while ago with the president of Russia. And I think there's a possibility that something could come out of it. And today's meeting is very important. We have, I guess, the seven very powerful leaders from Europe. And we're going to be meeting with them right after this meeting. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. If I can, first of all, thank you for the invitation and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you. And using this opportunity, many thanks to your wife, First Lady of the United States. She sent a letter to Putin about our children, abducted children, and my wife, she, First Lady of Ukraine. She gave the letter. It's not to you, to your wife.
Oh, I want
it. Yeah. So we're saying this sensitive topic. Yes, please. And thanks to our partners and that you supported this format. That after our meeting we can have leaders who are around us, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, EU, NATO. I mean, all partners around Ukraine supporting us. Thanks to them, and thank you very much for invitation.
Thank you very much for being here.
President Trump.
Do you think it's fair?
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. So, President Zelensky, you say in the Post on X today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And, is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelensky here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be. Look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended. And we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
President Zelensky, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. You know that today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. So, and I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war, and we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes. If the peace deal will be achieved, are you going to be willing to send American peacekeepers to Ukraine?
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine. We're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long term. This is very long term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia. We're going to work with Ukraine, and we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you roll that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Mr. President, Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it, and we're going to get it ended. It was, I've done 6 wars. I've ended 6 wars, and I thought this maybe would be the easiest one, and it's not the easiest one. It's a tough one. A lot of reasons for it, and they'll be talking about it for a long time, but they'll be talking about the others. Look, India, Pakistan, we're talking about big places. When you look at, you just take a look at some of these wars. You go to Africa and take a look at that. Rwanda and the Congo, Republic of the Congo. That's been going on for 31 years. And so we've done a total of 6, and we really have 6, not including the fact that we obliterated, and it turned out to be a total obliteration, the nuclear, as you said, the future nuclear capability of Iran. And this one, I think we're going to get solved also. I feel confident we're going to get it solved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you tell us about your conversations with European leaders and what they need to see to support an end to the war?
Yeah, well, we're going to be meeting with a great representative group and 7 very powerful, very big countries and great people, all friends of mine and friends of yours. And we're going to have some suggestions made. They want to see peace. They would like to see peace.
President Trump. President Trump, do you think it's fair for Ukraine and for Russia to achieve a lasting and durable peace if Ukraine cedes its territories that Russia hasn't yet conquered? Do you think it's a fair peace for Ukraine?
We're going to have a lasting peace. Just to answer the first part of your question, we're going to have a lasting peace. I hope it's going to be immediately. I hope it doesn't have to go on. And I think people of the whole world is going to be very happy when that's announced.
Thank you, Mr. President. You posted on social media, Mr. President, a very touching letter from the First Lady, and the letter was hand-delivered to President Putin, and it calls for an end to the war, essentially, because of the children and the children's future. Why did the First Lady feel that letter was necessary? Was it because she believes that Mr. Putin is the aggressor in the war? Is a similar letter being hand-delivered to President Zelensky?
So the First Lady felt very strongly. She's watched the same thing that you watch and that I watch. I see things that you don't get to see, and it's horrible. But when she's got a great love of children, she has a wonderful son that she loves, probably more than anybody, including me. I hate to say it, but she loves her son. She loves children, and she hates to see something like this happening. And that goes for other wars too. I mean, she sees the heartbreak, the parents, the funerals that you see on television. Always funerals. We want to see something other than funerals. No, she felt it was a beautiful letter. It was very well received by him. And she did ask me to say, you know, she would love to see this end. She would love to see it end. And she says it very openly, very proudly, and with great sorrow, because so many people have been killed.
Mr. President, last week,
Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Yes, sir. I've got a question for each of you.
Yes.
First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said the one that attacked you last time. See, that was I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. See, I changed, you are not.
Maybe yours is much better. Real quickly, upon peace, God willing we get peace, are you open to holding an election in your country?
Yes, of course. We are open for election, yes. We have to do safety circumstances, and a little bit we need to work in the parliament, because during the war you can't have elections, but we can do security. We need, maybe, how to say, we need a truth, yes, everywhere, in the battlefield, in the sky, and the sea, yeah, to make possible for people to do democratic, open, legal elections.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
Yeah.
No.
Speaking of news, I got a question for you. This sounds insane for me even to ask this, but do you think the American media really doesn't even want a peace deal, because they've seen they've been so critical of you every step of the way as you lead the charge for peace?
It's an amazing phenomenon. I said that if in the settlement you got Moscow, St. Petersburg, and thousands of miles around them, they would say I made a bad deal. The level of hatred and animosity is incredible. Not with all. I mean, we have great people up here. We also have terrible people up there that I think are told what to say. But, you know, in solving all of these wars, they don't even write about it. You know, I saw major wars. I saw wars that have been going on for 31, 35, and 37, and a couple of quicker ones. One that was going to go into a full-blown deal very quickly. You know what the one I'm talking about. It was a big one. But they don't even write about that. No matter what I do, no matter what, and you know, this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. It's just that, and I've lived with that for a long time. I've lived with it since just before the first election. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office, but I won in a landslide, so that people understand. They're the only ones that count, ultimately. But I've also had great reporters. I've had journalists that are very good. But it's very sad when you do the right thing. As an example, they said, because of the fact that Vladimir Putin came to American soil, this was a tremendous defeat for Donald Trump. No, it was really wonderful that he did it. It was a hard thing for him to do, to be honest with you. It was the opposite of what they said, but they said it. Now, if he didn't come, they'd say that was also bad for Trump. You know, there's no way. And there's just a great dishonesty of the press, and I think that's why it's lost its credibility. You know, its credibility is at an all-time low. We have a thing going on right now in D.C. We went from the most unsafe place anywhere to a place that now friends are calling me up, Democrats are calling me up, and they're saying, sir, I want to thank you. My wife and I went out to dinner last night for the first time in 4 years, and Washington, D.C. is safe, and you did that in 4 days. I'll tell you, it's safe. I had another friend of mine, he has a son who's a great golfer, he's on tour, and he came in 4th yesterday in the big tournament where Scotty Scheffler made the great shot, and he said his son is going to dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight. I said, would you have allowed that to happen a year ago? He said, no way, no way. He said, what you've done is incredible. And I think the people realize it. But the press says, he's a dictator, he's trying to take over. No, all I want is security for our people. But people that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner, and the restaurants the last 2 days were busier than they've been in a long time. Thank you.
I walked around yesterday with MTG. If you can walk around with D.C. with MTG and not be attacked, the city is safe.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Last week, you warned of what you called severe consequences if a 30-day ceasefire or any type of ceasefire were not agreed to by Russia. Will there be severe consequences? Does that change because
I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires. Would I like the concept, you know, I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other. But all of these deals I made without even the mention of the words ceasefire.
President Zelenskyy, can you explain the decision to offer Ukraine Article 5-like security guarantees, but stop short of pushing for their full membership?
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything on that yet. If you look back and you go back long before President Putin, it was always a statement that they would never allow Ukraine into NATO. So that was a statement that was made, but we haven't discussed any of that yet. We're going to be discussing it today, but we will give them very good protection, very good security. That's part of it. And the people that are waiting for us, they are, I think they're very like-minded. They want to help out also.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President Trump. The United States has already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this war effort in Ukraine. At best, it is a stalemate, and the killing continues. So, President Trump, how much more is the United States willing to give Ukraine? And President Zelensky, how much more do you want?
Well, I'll start off just by saying we're not giving anything now. We're selling weapons. This is something before, I guess the number is well over $300 billion. That was under Joe Biden, a corrupt politician, not a smart man, never was. By the way, go back 40 years, he was not a smart man 40 years ago either, but now he's in particular bad. This was done by a corrupt administration that shouldn't have been in, and frankly, if the right results of the election were given, if I were president, this war would have never taken place, and he would have been very happy, because he would have liked to have seen. I mean, they went through hell. He went through hell. This war would have never happened, and the people that were killed, a couple of million people, a lot of people with soldiers and everything else, and the people that have been displaced and forced into other areas and other countries because of what's happened, none of that would have happened. And I'm just saying that He was a horrible president. Whether it was the borders or this, he was just a horrible, corrupt president.
Mr. President,
you want to
I can't. Thank you so much. So first of all, we have possibility now to buy weapon from the United States. We are thankful for this program and this opportunity. We are thankful for Europe. They pay for this. And through NATO program, for example, Pearl and etc., we have some programs where we can have some money to finance this. And this is a part, I think, it's not a part for the war and to defend us. It also will be a part for security guarantees, to strengthen our army, to rearm Ukrainian army. This is very, very important. And it depends how much money we need to rearm. For example, the question of air defense, we spoke about it with President Trump, and I'm happy that we have now bilateral decisions and we work on it with production, American production. Nobody in Europe has so many air defense like Patriots, for example. We need it very much, and this is also about defending.
I think the good news, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. You mentioned the Patriots. How good are they?
Systems.
We have systems, they're literally 100% foolproof. And it's really like shooting two bullets, two bullets hitting each other in the air in a space like this. The chance is 100%. It's 99 to 100%. So we sell the equipment to NATO. And NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened. Yeah, please.
Real quickly, you pushed out on social media.
Brian, go first.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that and how important
Well, that's a very off-topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened. Massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections. We'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, but most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time with this, but I'm glad you asked me that question. We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me. They asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. They said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time in rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things, otherwise you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 0 in 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but it's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's, but 0, 0, and 0. You go millions of people. Here from Europe, biggest people in Europe, and they want to give protection. They feel very strongly about it, and we'll help them out with that. I think it's very important. I think it's very important to get the deal done.
You've been involved with the peacekeeping in Ukraine since your first day in the administration. What would you say to the Ukrainian people right now who are suffering under the Russian attacks and hoping that the American people will stand with them?
Well, I know Ukrainian people. I've known many over the years. They're great people. They're smart. They're energetic. They love their country. I mean, they love their country, and we want to get this war ended. That's all I can do. I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all. I want to get the war stopped. Very important.
Mr. President, was there any aspect of your discussion with Vladimir Putin that left you disappointed?
Look, we just spoke to, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, there you go. That was round 2 of the meeting in the Oval Office between President Zelensky and Donald Trump. Following that live, alongside me, Home and Security Editor Mark White. Your takeaways from that, Mark?
Well, they were falling over each other to be pleasant, nice and polite. And really, apart from that, we didn't learn an awful lot because they were talking in terms of generalities. They're not going to give anything away, really, on what red lines are, what they're expecting from the talks in the next few minutes. So we'll only really find out afterwards whether what Russia has initially proposed to the United States is achievable as far as Ukraine is concerned. Interestingly, Donald Trump was talking about the issues around security guarantees, because remember that President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said they've got from Russia an agreement that they would be able to offer NATO-like guarantees. Now, everybody took that as meaning that we and other coalition of the willing partners would be able to put troops in on the ground in Ukraine. Moscow has just put out a statement, just as President Zelensky and President Trump sat down, saying absolutely no NATO boots on the ground, singled out Britain for particular criticism, saying that the UK was intent on pushing its NATO partners down a very dangerous path. So
saying that Britain wanted the boots on the ground, you mean?
Well, in general, saying that the exact quote, they accuse Britain of being obsessed with the desire to constantly raise the stakes in Ukraine. Britain is pushing NATO partners to a dangerous brink beyond which a new global conflict is not far away.
Isn't that interesting? I find that fascinating.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, Moscow, in particular, Putin has had a particular bee in his bonnet about the UK for some time that continues to be buzzing around in his head. So in terms of boots on the ground, anyway, it seems, from Moscow's point of view, that that is a red line if those were NATO troops. Now, that doesn't preclude, perhaps, other countries providing some kind of reassurance force in Ukraine. I guess that's the kind of small print that would be up for negotiation if they move towards a trilateral meeting. And that you heard on numerous occasions during this talk with the press there about the trilat coming up and the hope that they can move to that.
Because it started, I'm listening to that, I felt that Donald Trump, you know, he started off basically by saying we're going to have this trilat. It was almost like a done deal that this meeting between Zelensky, Putin and Trump was going to take place. Then at the very end, he then kind of said, if we get this trilat, then things will potentially progress. So whether or not, do you think that that will happen?
I really don't know, but we'll know that there is something workable, at least, from Vladimir Zelensky's point of view, if coming away from this evening, there is then a move towards a trilat, because then clearly there are principles there that Vladimir Zelensky is accepting that they can at least have discussions on. If there are red lines where he just is not willing to engage with, then it doesn't seem that the prospect of a trilat is in the offing, in which case, as President Trump said there, we're just, you know, continuing with business as usual, with thousands of lives in the course of a week being spilt in the battlefields of Ukraine and in the cities of Ukraine.
I thought there was a very strong, strident question halfway through as well, where they were basically asked, Donald Trump, you've given $100 billion of dollars. How much more money are you willing to give? And Zelensky, how much more do you want? And when I'm looking at viewer comments and I'm looking at more broader commentary, this kind of notion that it's just been essentially an ongoing war, a black pit of money poured into it over and over again, that is something that really is coming through from people that are watching these proceedings.
Yes, there's no doubt. It's hit everyone hard. Here in the UK, billions of pounds have been spent on going to the assistance of Ukraine, and billions more, it seems, in the months and years ahead will be spent. And not just that, but remember when the war broke out, there was a seismic shock in this country and around the world in terms of the fallout, what that did, inflationary pressures that put on energy prices, on the price of normal commodities. And then, of course, add to that just the money that's having to be found from additional government departments to prop up Ukraine, not just in this country, but others around the world. So everyone is invested on trying to find a solution to this conflict.
David, one of my viewers, says Zelensky should have insisted that that meeting with what he calls bully boy Trump should have been held in private, as was the meeting with Putin. He says Donald Trump has not even pretended to be even-handed in these negotiations, and he still, David says, fails to acknowledge Putin's aggression for what it is. Zia Youssef, we're almost out of time, but you were listening to that too. Your takeaway?
Well, my take was it was clearly more constructive than the last meeting they had in the Oval Office, Michelle. Number two, I think no matter how cynical you are and how far you think peace might be, it does seem like we are closer to peace than when Joe Biden was president. I think that's objectively true. And two things can be true at the same time. Vladimir Putin is an evil despot who clearly started this war. But it is also true that Keir Starmer is obviously desperate to divert attention from his failings at home.
Martin, you were also listening to this. One of the points that raised your eyebrow when they were talking about a question was put to Zelenskyy, would you have an election basically once all this is over? And in a roundabout way, he basically said yes. And Donald Trump was saying, you know, the thing with being in war is that essentially elections get put on hold. You were quite concerned about that.
Well, it's a typical Trump press conference, and I agree with you. It was much more pleasant to watch than the previous one, where he basically just attacked Vladimir Zelenskyy on the spot. But yeah, I mean, when Trump makes jokes about sitting for a third term as president, I think he is always slightly half joking, which is quite concerning because he does keep bringing it up. He seems to be quite addicted to the thought of standing for a third term, and when he quips that, you know, any president at war can withhold an election, you know, that is going to raise some eyebrows, not just here in the GBNews studio.
Yeah, but they always say with Donald Trump, don't they, you should take him seriously, not literally. You know, what do you think to that at home? Do you sit there thinking, I don't know, he's some kind of dictator? Does those kind of things bother you or not? Now, any minute now, they will be moving into the meeting with the European heads. I mean, you've got quite the cast assembled at very, very short notice. He was asked as well, is this the end of the road for American support? He said basically never say never. He was looking forward to this meeting with those European heads. What do you think we can expect?
Well, they will have to pick up and run with whatever Volodymyr Zelenskyy and President Trump can agree on. If Volodymyr Zelenskyy does feel that there's something that can move to a trilateral meeting, then the European leaders, the head of NATO and the President of the European Commission can have their input. And that can be a more meaningful discussion at that part. But it all hinges on this, you know, whether Volodymyr Zelenskyy feels there is something from what Vladimir Putin has, you know, discussed with Donald Trump and has put forward as what he would see as a way forward in ending the war. It's by no means certain that will be the case. The hope has to be that. As Zia said, I think we are closer to going down a road towards peace than we have been for a number of years, because under Joe Biden as president of the US, with European leaders as well, other allies of Ukraine, it was inertia. Nothing was moving. Everyone condemned Russia, but no real meaningful steps were taken to try to bring all of the warring parties around the table, apart from the first few months after the start of the war. When that fell apart, there were no other real meaningful attempts to do that. And I think most right-minded people feel that it just can't go on like this, that countries cannot keep giving billions and billions of pounds to Ukraine for a never-ending war that only ever seems to give Ukraine enough weaponry to keep them in the fight, but not actually to go on and have a decisive victory over Vladimir Putin.
I just want to echo, I mean, I'm looking at this now and I'm just trying to get a sense of whether or not you guys, the viewers at home, actually feel that you are closer to peace in this situation or not. And I'm not really getting the sense that people do, watching that, feel like, oh yes, progress is being made. Of course, he was at pains, he repeatedly said that this was Joe Biden's war. Donald Trump said, you know, he feels that he's ended 6 wars. He thought that he could end this, was it in about a day or something like that? He acknowledges that that, of course, was wrong. But there you go, ladies and gents. You can feel free to ponder over what you've just seen then. Opinions, of course, will be divided. But ultimately, whatever side of the fence anyone sits on, this war just needs to be brought to a close, because every single day now, innocent people are being killed. And if you're someone that sits there and says, fight to the bitter end, fight to the bitter end, go on then, because the last time I checked, Ukraine were accepting sign-ups from all over the place. So if you sit there and you're chanting that at your TV sets, get in touch. I'm sure that they'd have you without a nanosecond's thought. My perspective is absolutely no chance. I'll be doing everything possible to keep my loved ones away from that. This talk about boots on the ground, it all gets said a little bit too casually for my liking. I don't like it at all. Anyway, look, I'll tell you what I don't like. When my panel haven't even had a chance to get stuck into the other issues of the day. I'll have to get them back another night, but for now, thank you very much for your company. Thank you, Mark White, for your fabulous analysis, as always. Everyone at home, thank you. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M4 eastbound at junction 43, Landasi, has roadworks with the on-slip closed. Diversions are easing congestion. Delays on the M61 southbound exit. Slip at junction 5 near Bolton follow a collision causing lane closures. In Kent, an overturned vehicle on the M20 westbound between junctions 3 and 1 has shut all lanes. In Cornwall, the A30 westbound between the junctions with the A38 Bodmin and the A391 has one lane closed due to an incident, causing a 10-minute delay. On the trains, Great Western Railway faces disruption